Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn. And we couldn't do it without the master of ceremonies, the founder of the Four Horsemen, the enforcer himself, AA, Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you, man?
I'm wonderful. As you can see, I'm getting this thing down, whatever it is you do.
Well, here's the deal. I don't want to yell into the microphone. I know some of you who just listen, you're probably like, what the hell are they talking about? Go over to adfreeshows.com. We're not just bringing you audio now, we're bringing you video. Arn, folks are going to get sick of me and you this week. We had our regular show on Tuesday, and boy, Dave Silva did you dirty with the graphic. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then yesterday we had Tully Blanchard on a video chat with us. We never have guests. We broke our format. We did it for Geico, and now we're doing it again. 3 Arn shows in the same week. Is it possible to overdose on Arn?
Yes. Don't believe it? Ask my family.
Man, there's so much fun stuff happening this week. By the way, this is Christmas week. As Arn and I are recording this, it's Christmas Eve's Eve. But I think you'll probably hear it either on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, whatever. We're just thankful that you're spending some time during the holiday season with Arn and myself. And we're thankful that Geico is making it happen. Our topic today is Arn's run in the WWF. We have tons of questions about this. It feels like people are so curious and fascinated with your brainbuster run. I thought, you know what? Let's just give them what they want. Let's dedicate a whole show to the WWF run when you were an in-ring competitor. But before we jump into that, I got to ask, did you see how your man, Dave Silva, as JR calls him, Bull Ramos, did you dirty with that graphic this week?
Would that be Santa Claus laying on his side?
Yes.
With a big drum?
Yes.
Well, I consider myself to be generous with the people that are around me. And I do have a drum, but somehow to be laying there like Playgirl magazine is not the answer, Dave.
It's not. And it's funny because when I saw it, I quote tweeted it and I said, really, dude? And tagged him. Do you like walking normally? Because you're going to get a spine buster and that'll be corrected shortly, I'm sure.
If he wasn't such a valuable part of the team and jumps on everything I ask him to do, I would say, you know what? I'm going to ride down to Dave's and just have a word with him about making me look better than I look, not worse.
Yeah.
But he's such a value to you. Do you even realize how valuable Dave Silva is?
He tells me every day.
Well, hey, if you don't sing your own praises, nobody else is going to do it.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, that is a big part of marketing. Let's talk about the WWF, man. I'm pretty excited to talk about this. We just talked a lot with Tully Blanchard about how it all came together and why you left. I want to sort of fill in the middle, but usually what we do on this show every other week is we throw the keys to the show to our listeners. And I want to start with that. Instead of finishing with fan questions, let's start with fan questions. And we've got a ton. There's no way we'll get to all of them, but let's jump in here. Big Extra has a question that everybody wants to know. Why did the Brainbusters never have an entrance theme?
Well, wow. We never had music up until we went to the ring with Rick and they played his music. We
Right.
never had a set of interest music. So it was another day at the office. However, on their show, where most of the talent that were going to be featured did have music, correct? Didn't they at that time?
Yeah, almost everybody. I think the only other talent who didn't have music in the WWF at the time was Andre the Giant. So for you to not have entrance music was definitely different.
Yeah, and with a show that was so high on production values and making it a big deal and feeling like, oh, this is a huge thing, pyro blowing up, music, that's one way you can look at it. And you can look at it if the announcers would have told the story, which I don't think they did, is it's different. And if Andre was the only other one that didn't have music, that puts us in the exclusive group and it makes it different. And it's like we're all business from the minute you come through the curtain to the minute you go back through the curtain. That could have been easily sold by the announcers. Pretty sure they didn't go that route. They just, we weren't one of their creations, and you know how that goes.
Josh White wants to know, is there anybody who showed hostility towards you or Tully when you first were coming in? I'm assuming with you guys being such a hot team from a rival company, you may have had some issues.
Not to our face, and here's what may have helped us. Just to be perfectly honest with you. I never had a beef with just a handful of guys the entire time I've been in the business. And at that time, I had no beefs with anybody working there. But Tully and I pull up to Fort Wayne, Indiana, I believe it was, our first television taping, and get our bags out of the trunk. We're walking in the back door and we see this commotion. And at that moment in time that we came through the back door was when the Rougeaus had their deal with the Bulldogs, the sucker punch. Jacques hit him with a roll of quarters, I think, knocked some of Bulldog's teeth out, and the shit hit the fan. It was like a movie. We walk in the back door, shit starts blowing up. Had nothing to do with us, obviously, but I guess there had been some ribbing going on in the locker room and some stuff that wasn't, had really built to a crescendo, and it blew up this day at TV. And I guess there was a big talent meeting right away, and any more ribbing or any more anything, and guys are going to lose their job. It got serious. So if anybody was planning anything for us, it probably got the kibosh along with everything else that day.
Let's do a question here from Jason. He says, who came up with the entrance? I have no recollection of him or Tully ever jogging to the ring in the NWA. I don't think you did that every time in the WWF, but I did see it a few times. Is that more of a production element where you just need the timing of the show? And if there's not music or whatever, maybe that makes sense. Or was there more to it than that?
I don't remember, but if I was guessing, we probably didn't have much time.
Right.
And that was a way to gain a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And in a minute and a half, that's a lot of TV time. If you make it pay off for you. That's the first thing comes to mind. I don't think anyone would have told us, get on down there or, hey, let's try this. Let's jog to the ring. Because if you flip the coin, the Rockers always ran to the ring.
Right.
So it wouldn't have been, okay, I just don't think it was planned. I think it was more that we didn't have much time. Let's get down there and make it pay some dividends.
Here's one from RCS 88. Was Tom Mcgee your only singles match in the WWF?
I don't think so. I think when one of the Bushwhackers, one of them got hurt, and Tully and I alternated out working a single match, and one of us would be on the floor and one would wrestle the single match. We had a whole couple of loops of that. Other than that, Tom Mcgee might have been the only one. He was the only dark match I think I had that was a single. And it was basically just to see what he had.
Here's a fun one here. I don't think we've talked about this before. Halloween Havoc 89 says, we know fans in the crowd would throw up the four fingers to you guys in the WWF, but did any of the guys backstage do it almost mockingly? I'd imagine a lot of the boys back then at least would have still acknowledged how cool a group the Horsemen were privately.
Nothing that I ever saw. I'm sure a lot of things went on when we weren't in the room.
Right.
There's always been controversy and jealousy and competition within the business, and that's good. I mean, everybody should be doing their dead level best to go out and steal the show every night.
That's right.
And we just continued to do what we always did. And I know that the guys working with us, if they didn't have a positive thought about us going in, coming out, they did, because they saw that we were dead set on making the match get over, having our opponents get over, and basically do our job.
Joshua says, Mr. Anderson, God forbid, but what would you do if Vince McMahon passed away tomorrow and then read in his will he'd left his entire company to his old employee, Arn Anderson? What would be your first move?
Probably drink a fifth of Jack Daniels in one gulp and have somebody slap me in the face, because I was obviously having a nightmare.
I can't imagine. I mean, I know that everybody likes to armchair quarterback what WWE does. I get it. But can you imagine actually having to run that company? That would not be a fun job.
Not qualified. First one in the world to tell you, not qualified. Now, I think I could offer some suggestions, which I've always done, but running that company, oh my God, you have to have a staff of people that you trust that are very, very smart where their business is and sees where it's going and see where it's been and try to mesh the two. But my God, I mean, so many things that no one ever sees, myself included, that go into running that company. I couldn't imagine it.
John wants to know, do you have any Andre the Giant stories?
Basically the simplest thing about Andre, which if you know that some days his back was killing him and he was not in a good mood, and on those days you better find another locker room. Other days he was the biggest, happiest, pleasant giant you could possibly be. But somewhere in between those two, there is a giant that had serious gas. And buddy, when he pooted, you better hit the door on the fly, because it engulfed the room instantaneously. The flapping that was involved for the noise effect before the funk started to engulf the room was a high spot all its own. But buddy, it smelled like a meat locker full of a bunch of rotting meat. That's all I can tell you. And he would just go, still got his handful of cards.
The flapping, my goodness.
Flapping.
Jesse wants to know, which tag belts did you like better, Arn? The NWA one on those blue straps, or those dual plated WWF tag belts?
I think they both, more so than what they looked like, it was more so what they represented. And I think both of them represented different things. One was NWA was my home. It's what I grew up on. It was my world. And to be the World Tag Team Champions and represent the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions was a huge honor. To be the WWF at the time, tag champions, means not only were we doing the right things with NWA, apparently we had done something right as far as the business in general, because two companies were as different as night and day. So to be recognized as one of the number one teams in the world, pretty good feeling for both.
Yeah, I mean, great belts. As a belt collector, I like the dual plated, but there's something about a colored strap that I think most belt collectors really dig too. That's pretty fun.
Agreed.
Here's one from Andrew. If things had worked out and you would have stayed in the WWF, who would you have wanted to wrestle that you didn't get the chance to?
Probably Mr. Perfect, which I never wrestled. How about Ted DiBiase Sr.?
Yeah, I can't believe you never wrestled him.
Nope. But what a hell of a performer. Gosh, those two come to mind right away. I think let's just go with those two.
Here's a fascinating one. What was your reaction when Dusty Rhodes showed up in '89?
It was different. It was different.
He went from being the boss to one of the boys, and you're there to see it happen. That's an interesting dynamic, huh?
It could have been. It sure could have been. I was the first one to go up and shake his hand and say, I hope there's no hard feelings. He agreed there was not. And I'm a guy that will forever be indebted to Dusty Rhodes and what the 3 years with Jim Crockett Promotions, and he was in charge of that. Pretty much set the foundation for the rest of my life, as far as my, being financially successful, having a long run with the company, and pretty much learning the business. So I learned so much being in the company that was under his watch. It was cool. Now I was sitting there gritting my teeth trying to figure out how they were going to punish this guy who had openly said, we're going to kick Vince's ass.
Right.
Which word gets out, and that's a challenge. And if you do, more power to you. If you don't, somewhere down the road, the guy's going to make a comeback. That's what he does. And when I saw the polka dots and all that stuff, I knew that the options were minimal. And Dusty had led a grand lifestyle. He had a big home and nice cars and nice things and provided nice things for his family. But he had a pretty good lifestyle pumped up. And that was the only place you would have been able to work and make the kind of money that he was used to making. He was smart enough to just grin and go with the flow.
Yeah. When you've got that monthly overhead, you've got that monthly nut to cover. That's real stress for any husband, dad, provider. And he did what he needed to do. And by God, he made it work. He got polka dots over.
Sure did.
Wayne wants to know, Arn, what was the bigger adjustment when you left Crockett for the WWF? Was it travel or the size of the ring?
Travel. I could take a map and just about from memory, take my finger and sit you down beside me and go, hey, we would start here, Miami. We would go to Idaho the next day. We would go back to Boston. After Boston, we would go to Spokane, Washington. After Spokane, we'd go to Raleigh, North Carolina. After Raleigh, we would go back to New Mexico. And the skipping around and the length of flights and connections, you would look at me and say, you know what, you're full of shit. You're lying to me. Nobody could do that. Oh, yes. There was a couple of cruiser guys doing that. And it was like somebody just shut their eyes and took a map and just threw darts at it. No rhyme, no reason, no anything. And I guess that comes from a place where business was so hot, they were doing business wherever they went. So they weren't concerned about how long your flight was. They were just booking towns and building availability on that day. Hell, grab it. It's unbelievable.
Here's one about the Heenan family. David says, during your first year with the WWF, if you time traveled to today to bring back one wrestler to join the Heenan family, who would it be and why? So the gist is, who in today's wrestling world would have been a good fit with the Heenan family back in 88, 89?
In today's group of talent?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Just because of the hodgepodge of different personalities and everybody being different. How about John Moxley?
Oh, I could see that. That'd be fun.
He could be the lunatic, which is what he is anyway.
Works for me. Jeremy says, the first time I saw you guys on a WWF TV match, a pop-up window showed an interview of you guys during the match, and Tully made a comment like, look at what we're doing to these guys. Who came up with that idea and how was it received in the locker room? It was freaking great.
Well, I don't know how great it was. It was probably, I'm sure it was scripted, because that's not, I think we would have taken a more sophisticated approach than just look what we're doing to those guys.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'll go on record and say those were scripted.
Juan wants to know, was there ever any talk of you and Tully splitting up for singles action during your WWF run? I could have seen either one of you guys having a run with the Intercontinental title.
Thank you, sir, but no, sir. And it wasn't broke, and that wasn't something that we would be willing to fix.
Luke wants to know, prior to your coming in here, had you ever even met Bobby Heenan?
No, but what a wonderful experience I had after I met him. We've talked about this, Conrad. He's the most quick-witted, funny, hilarious guy you will ever meet. It doesn't matter. You know, you can walk up to Bobby, having not seen him for 2 weeks, and just walk up and just grab your belt buckle and turn it up and go, Bobby, what do you think of this belt buckle? And before you could get buckle out of your mouth, he had a jab at you. Had something funny. And, he was so quick. It amazed me how quick the guy was. Brilliant, I would say.
Josh White wants to know, let's say Tully were to have gotten injured and couldn't tag with you. Who would you have wanted to be your tag team partner as long as he couldn't wrestle? So the idea is they keep you in tags. You're going to have a run now without Tully. Who would it be?
Haku.
Oh, really?
And I'll tell you why, because when Tully turned in his notice and then he got popped, and sent home early in the middle of that 3-month notice, Haku became my partner to wrestle Demolition all around and finish our bookings.
Because Andre was hurting and moving slow, so you could just put you guys together.
And buddy, he could go.
Okay.
Haku could go, man. He's a hell of a performer. And I love the man. He's got the kindest heart of anybody you'll ever meet. And what a great roommate. We healed rooms together, traveled together, went to the gym together, everything. And, world-class gentleman.
Mike wants to know, was there any specific instructions Vince gave you to alter your in-ring work, and was blading a no-no there?
Don't do that.
Don't hold up the 4 fingers
under any circumstances. That was day one. And, what was the other one? Part of
was
it?
Blading a no-no?
Oh yeah. During those years, it was, it was HIV. Everybody was cognizant of it. It was a very real threat around that time, and absolutely no blading.
Well, let's talk about your time there. All the differences that we've broken down so far with fan questions. You mentioned a minute ago that you showed up to your first TV and sort of laid out what that scene was like. I've got your entire schedule, which is pretty crazy, in front of me. You really were all over the place. Fort Wayne, Indiana was filmed on October 5th, 1988. It aired on October 22nd. Your first match in the company is you guys teaming up, of course, with Bobby Heenan in your corner to defeat Tommy Angel and Bob Emery in 2 minutes and 31 seconds. Prior to the bout, Heenan introduced you both as the newest members of the Heenan family, and you're billed here as the Brainbusters. Boy, you're off to a hell of a start. You got a cool name, and they didn't change your look. You're not in silly costumes. They didn't put a bird on your shoulder or a snake in your bag. So that's all looking pretty good. And then you get Bobby Heenan. We're clicking on all cylinders so far.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing I'll never say is we weren't used properly, and we weren't given a goofy gimmick or goofy costuming. Other than being able to do this, which would have blew the roof off the house. I'm sorry. A lot of fans watch both shows.
Right.
So it's not like they didn't know what we were doing, but they were doing this for like 3 weeks or a month. But when we didn't give it back to them, they gave up. Because every time for the past 3 years, they had done this, we did this back to them, or that one. But to just ignore it, they just, after a while, they just went, shit, they're not giving it back to us. So piss on it. We'll stop doing it.
You did a Superstars taping where you guys picked up a win in 2 minutes and 15 seconds over David Isley and Rusty Riddle. Blanchard gets the win here with a slingshot suplex. Was it ever discussed, you guys using different style or different finishing maneuvers at all? Or just, hey, do your thing?
We already had them over. Why switch?
You had some early matches in the fall of 88 in October. I don't know why I'm being vague there. Jim Powers and Paul Roma. You guys had a bunch of matches with them. It's kind of ironic knowing not too terribly long from now, Roma is going to be with you in WCW and a Horseman. What can you tell us about working with Powers and Roma?
Oh, those guys they were great baby faces. They look good, great bodies, trained hard. As far as being a babyface team, they had all the babyface skills, and we enjoyed working with them. They could do just about everything. And, other than not being positioned very well, they were still looked good, could perform, and we enjoyed the matches with them.
This one really stuck out to me. October 28th, 1988. There's only 2,000 fans in attendance, but where are they? The Greensboro Coliseum, the home of Starrcade, the old Crockett territory. You're back just a few weeks or a few days into your WWF run, and you're taking on the Rockers. Man, a lot to unpack here. The first Brainbuster Rockers match. This is probably your first time in the same ring with Shawn Michaels, and there's only 2,000 fans in the freaking Greensboro Coliseum. If the banner out front would have said NWA instead of WWF, I have a feeling there would have been a lot more than 2,000 fans there. What do you remember about your first match with the Rockers, if anything?
I know how I feel about it, hearing it now.
Right.
I would have been humiliated that we only had 2,000 fans.
Right.
I would ask if we were advertised.
Right.
And if we were, I would be even more humiliated that that's all we could draw in Greensboro. But I also know Greensboro fans are extremely loyal. WWF was not their team.
Right.
NWA was their team. And I know this for a fact, there would be some that would go, I don't watch that stuff. Not going, even if Arn and Tully are there. But I would have, changed to another gear once that bell rang because those guys were so good. I caught myself just sitting there watching the match that, if I was on the apron, just marveling at the stuff they were doing. So I was an instant fan, and I wanted to get all that wrestling those guys that we could possibly get because every day was a learning experience for myself, for sure.
I'm fascinated by your run here, man, because here you are, the home of Starcade. You're back home. You're taking on two of the all-time greats in Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. And 2 days later, you're in Columbus, Ohio, and you're going to pick up a win against the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid. I imagine by this point in '88, Dynamite's probably hurting pretty good. What do you remember about working the Bulldogs?
Yeah, I mean, those guys were well established. I know Barry Darso of Demolition really enjoyed working with those guys. They were very physical, but very talented. But we caught them kind of towards the end of their run. They were on their way out. I think they were probably working a notice, and I guess the best thing you could take from that is they were business all the way. I had heard, Barry talk about what good guys those guys were. And Dynamite Kid was one that he kind of broke the mold about how big you got to be in this business, which I've always contested don't matter. If you're solid in your work ethic and you're believable, nobody's going to question 5 minutes into a match how tall you are. And he was one of those classic examples of guys that broke through that barrier and made it available for other small guys to be accepted in the business, I think.
It's so fascinating that you're seeing this right before they leave. I mean, a month later, they're out of there, but you can at least say you got to work with the Bulldogs, and it's just a couple of days after you worked with the Rockers. You're going to get a lot of TV time in early November, or I guess you filmed it in Toronto in early November, but it doesn't air until after the first of the year. But they let you go over 12 minutes on primetime wrestling, which in that era is a long match. It's you and Tully, of course, picking up a win over Jim Powers and Paul Roma. Blanchard is the illegal man here, and he's going to pin Powers with a sunset flip off the top and a clothesline from Arn Anderson, of course. But 12 minutes on primetime TV, not a big deal for you. You'd been doing it on Turner Station for a long time, but this isn't Challenge or Superstars. It's not syndicated. This is their flagship show, and to get featured there with a 12-minute match, that lets you know they've got big plans for you, right?
Yeah. And at that point, we had already gained their confidence that we could pull it off. We're all about business, bell to bell. And that never changed, never wavered. It's what we did.
I'm interested to see what you remember, if anything, about this big show in Ottawa, Ontario. You've got Tully and Arn beating Paul Roma and B. Brian Blair. And later in the same night, you're going to fight the tag team champions Demolition to a double DQ. Now, the reason you're pulling double duty is because you're substituting for the British Bulldogs, but this means you get to work with your old pal, Barry Darso. Do you remember this double duty and what happened with the Bulldogs?
I really don't. I really don't. But if that was the first time working with Barry and Bill, that was just, hey, work like you work with the Road Warriors.
Right.
Make them Demolition. And I'm sure that's exactly what happened. They hammered the dog shit out of us. But I don't remember the double duty. But in those days, if it was a TV taping, they would do 3 weeks of TV. So you could do, some TV tapings you would wrestle 3 times. And as we know, each time you go to the ring, after they see you once, the reaction is smaller. Third time you go to the ring, it's like, oh, come on, Jesus, even smaller. And there's nothing you could do about that, and that's the reason they sweetened up some of the crowd noise and some of those things that they could do from a production standpoint that kind of felt funny because we had never needed that. We had never needed to sweeten the crowd up. Just go do our thing and the crowd would give it back to you. So I don't remember that particular day though.
Let's talk about, maybe it's your first time. I don't know. We'll see. November 15th, 1988. You're at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. It's sold out, 14,600 fans there. And it's a Superstars taping. You guys are going to go to a no contest, with the Rockers. It airs in December, and then you guys continue the feud around all of the house shows. But the Cow Palace is a legendary wrestling building. Would you have been there with the NWA before, or was this your first time as far as you remember?
Yeah. Crockett ran that building. I don't remember the numbers. I don't think it was that good.
Yeah.
I think that was a WWF town.
Right.
And that just like we had our towns, the Greensboros, the Charlottes, the Atlantas, the Jacksonville, Floridas, all those towns that were pro NWA, Baltimore, WWF had a ton of them too. And their fans were loyal to that product. 14,000 people in the Cow Palace. That's pretty damn stout.
Yes, it is. Let's talk about Sacramento on the 16th. I mentioned earlier that you beat Roma and B. Brian Blair earlier in the month. Brian was subbing for Jim Powers that day, but allegedly at the Arco Arena, November 16th, big crowd, 15,900 folks there, definitely a WWF town. It comes out that B. Brian Blair was fired at this taping because he refused to do the job for you and Tully in a tag match. So it's Jim Brunzell and Lanny Poffo instead of the full Killer Bees team. You guys only get 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Blanchard pins Brunzell with a slingshot suplex. It airs on Wrestling Challenge about a month later. Do you remember the hubaloo here on B. Brian Blair?
I really don't. I don't remember that. And, I'm sorry he felt that way. Only he could tell you his reasoning if that actually occurred. But that would have been a private conversation, I would think, with probably him and Jack Lanza, in those days. If it was something that was taken care of in the locker room, you probably never even heard of it. And I don't remember hearing about that. But if it did, he had his reasons, and hope it worked out for him.
We've talked a lot about Survivor Series 88. We'll skip that for now, but it happened on the 24th. Big crowd there. Let's talk about December 6th, Daytona Beach, the Ocean Center. This is the same building where Hulk Hogan became a bad guy and joined the NWO, but they're doing a Superstars taping here for France. This is a fascinating time in the business where we're doing different tapings for different syndicated networks. And this is the time where you wrestled Tom Mcgee. The write-up is Tom Mcgee defeated Arn Anderson by countout at 5:44 following a super kick, which knocked Anderson out to the floor. 10,000 plus here in the building. We've talked about this a little bit. You want to mention to us again what you remember about Tom Mcgee and your single match here in Daytona?
Well, I've come to find out that apparently it was a 3-match series. It was me and Tom, DiBiase and Tom, Bret and Tom, Bret Hart, different TV tapings. And it was all the dark match. There were dark matches before the show started and all that. And it was basically to find out, other than a punishment, which I never looked at it as being, but a test. Yes. Number one, to see what he had. And number two, to see how I handled doing the favor for him. Of course, that was a test in those days. And the worst thing you could say is, why are they beating me? The answer would be, they're going to beat you every week after that.
Right.
That's just the biggest no there is. Other than being a thief or being just totally reckless, why are they beating me? Just don't fly. Why not beat you? Who can you beat? Would be my question. Is there anybody you can actually beat? But Tom had an incredible look, incredible body, was an incredible athlete. And as we know, that doesn't necessarily translate into becoming a great professional wrestler. A lot of great athletes in different genres have came through our industry, and it's totally different from anything anybody's ever done. And for whatever reason, Tom just never worked out and kind of just disappeared off the planet.
Yeah, we brought him back for Starcast 2 in Vegas, and it was quite the happening to get to relive that match and watch it with Brett and Tom. Let's talk about when you're working with Brett, because it happens next in the Meadowlands, December 18th, 1988, the Brainbusters and the Hart Foundation. Did you have a preference working with the Rockers or working with the Hart Foundation?
If I had my druthers, I would rotate between the Rock and Roll Express and the Rockers every other day for my entire career.
Wow. That's awesome.
I'm not speaking down about Brett and Neidhart. They were tremendous performers, and they were a great team, and they knew each other, and they were such a contrast between their styles. Your best teams to me were the ones that had totally different styles, but they just meshed and they catered to each other. But when you've had the experience of the Rock and Roll Express and the Rockers, they're just special. And they'll be talking about those matches, I hope, 20 years from now.
Oh, they will. I'm glad to see you guys are starting off 89 in my home state here in Huntsville, Alabama. January 3rd is the first time you guys win a match with a Spike pile driver, as far as I know. That's for a Superstars taping. It'll air later that same month. The next day, you're down in Birmingham, only a couple hours away. This is a Wrestling Challenge taping. It's going to air in February. And again, the Spike pile driver. How did that evolve into being your new finish maneuver here?
We talked about it, and assuming that we were going to be working with Demolition, we thought it made sense to have a high impact finish that involved both of us. So should it come up, that would be something believable that you could use on Demolition down the road.
We're at our
Make sense?
It does. I like it a lot.
You ever thought about it that way, did you?
I have not.
There was actually a thought process and a conversation and method to the madness.
Let's talk about the Royal Rumble 1989. It's your second pay-per-view event. Of course, your first one was Survivor Series. 19,000 folks here on January 15th. You come in about 28 minutes in, you last for about 10 minutes that night. It takes a couple of big guys to eliminate you. Well, I guess one giant one named Hulk Hogan. I think he gets both of you with a double clothesline. Those big guys are known as the 24-inch pythons. But what can you tell us about your first and only Royal Rumble?
Well, the goal was, you know who the man was at that time?
You got to put over Hogan. Hogan must pose.
It was our idea to do the double clothesline because I can assure you, in those days, people were concerned, talent, getting themselves over. There wasn't a big thought process of what can I do for the other guy, because it was so competitive. It's such a cutthroat business at that time. And guys were just, and I get it, guys were trying to get themselves over. I'll just say it. We were already over.
Right.
And we could do something like this with Hogan because it made him who he was, bigger than life. And I assure you, you weren't going to see that the rest of the night. There was a plan. We get in there and float around for 10 minutes or so and make it as exciting, feed as many guys as we possibly can. And when it's time, have Hogan eliminate us. And he was grateful. He said he was. He said, "Thank you very much." You know, that was above and beyond, and we knew exactly what we were doing.
Check this out. January 23rd, 14,000 fans in Madison Square Garden. It's going to air on Primetime Wrestling a week later. Arn and Tully are going to defeat Shawn and Marty in 16-14 when Blanchard pinned Jannetty after Anderson swept Jannetty's foot during an attempted suplex and held the laces of his boot down during the cover. This is your Madison Square Garden debut. Well, I hate to make this, more sappy than it needs to sound, but for a Rome, Georgia boy, wrestling in the Omni is your Madison Square Garden. But then actually getting to wrestle in Madison Square Garden has to be a whole nother level, right?
Nope.
Really? With all the famous Ali, Frazier, all that great history in that arena, it was just another show?
You don't get it. In my mind, the Omni was Madison Square Garden.
I got you.
It was just in a different geographical
Right.
place.
Right.
That's where, because I never watched WWF TV because I didn't get it growing up, but I got the Superstation. And I got to see all of those incredible talents that passed through there. Rome, where I lived, about once every 6 weeks or so, would get a live event that I could go see, which was the same company I was watching on television.
Mm-hmm.
And that arena, the Omni, it was just like it was the Holy Grail. And when I went to New York, I was so shell shocked just by trying to get a rent-a-car parked across the street, 3 floors down on a parking deck. By the time I got in the business, my nerves were already, or in the building, my nerves was already shot. Now you got to go out and wrestle a match. And if you look at the back part of Madison Square Garden, it's pretty much a dump.
It is.
And it's like, but then you start to think about what you said, all the history, all the great teams, all the great matches, all the things that the boxing matches,
yes,
every event that had happened. And it starts to, as you look around that arena, you start to get a feel for, hey, this place is something special. And, it's just, I was loyal to the Omni, which will always seem like the Holy Grail for me, but I get it where the Garden is concerned. But for anyone that has had to not take a cab or have a car service, anyone that has driven a rent-a-car from Newark to the Garden and parked across the street 3 floors down, so that if you're there till the end and you walk down and get in your car and you're trying to get out of that parking deck, thousands of people are walking down the parking deck as you're trying to go up it. And if you don't think I've had a few rent-a-cars beat up, windows knocked out, keyed up, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's a line of cars going up. It is one of the most frustrating, nauseating things you've ever went through. And I cannot stress it enough. Ask anybody that's been through it.
Well, that's disappointing. But I get it. I've been there. The security's another level these days too. They have remodeled it, so it's a little nicer, but it is
you took a limo though, right?
Yeah, I got dropped off.
You weren't driving a rent-a-car.
No.
A different story getting dropped off at the awning by your car service. Whole different experience.
I like that you're low key shitting on me. Let's keep that going. In Tucson, you're another sellout over here, January 24th. Sean and Marty this time are going to fight you to a no contest. Here we are several months into your run. You've still not lost a match. There's been some double count outs and DQs and things like that. But nobody's gotten a pinfall over you, and that streak is going to continue. You actually work with a very young Louis Spicoli on the 25th, the very next day in Phoenix. It's a TV taping for Wrestling Challenge. I had no idea you wrestled Louis Spicoli back in 1989. And hell, you may not have remembered that either. Or did you?
Single match?
It was a tag match. It was, he was teaming with a guy named Ricky Atakai, or Atakai, Ricky Atakai.
Atakai.
Yeah.
I think you were probably right the first time. Just guessing. Ataki?
Yeah, whatever. Fuck it. He lost. Even Tully beat the shit out of him. Took about 2 minutes. So whatever. I was fascinated by Louis Spicoli though. There was a reason I didn't mention old Ricky, because I knew I got to stay away from that last name. Let me just keep going.
Well, he's not offended. Hell, you're talking about him on a top shelf show here.
No doubt about it.
Getting a plug.
I want to mention, you guys come back to Greensboro. You're at the Coliseum again. the home of Starrcade, February 5th, 1989. You're working with the Rockers in a return match. You're in a losing effort here, but it's by DQ. I don't know why they would beat you in Greensboro. I guess because you're the heels. But dude, you were embarrassed with 2,000 folks there last time. There's only 1,800 here. This is not a good trend. We should keep our ass out of Greensboro.
Yeah, I'm disappointed and I'm embarrassed. And anybody with any business sense about our business would be embarrassed. It's terrible.
Let's talk about your next major. This is probably your biggest show of the company at this point. Saturday night's main event, number 20. It's filmed on February 16th, 1989, Hershey Park Arena, Hershey, PA, 9,000. It's a sellout. It gets a 10.0 rating on NBC when it airs in March. They start the show, or they feature on the show, Okerlund doing an interview with you three. I say you three because I'm including Bobby the Brain. Great little promo here. And then the actual match itself, of course, goes to a double count out when everybody's brawling on the floor 9 minutes in. What was it like doing an NBC Saturday Night Live or Saturday night's main event?
And it was with the Rockers?
Yeah. This is not the 2 out of 3 falls though. This is a 9-minute double.
No. And anytime on that show, now Dick Ebersol, for whatever reason, loved us.
Right.
And we loved him because he got us on all those Saturday night main events. And the number one thing was the exposure. The numbers were ridiculous on that show. Everybody was watching. And even more so, you got a double payoff. You got a payoff from NBC and you got to pay off from the company.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
And they were always packed. They were always big buildings, and you were paid just like it was a house show. So very profitable night.
All through February and even into March and April, you're all over, like Ontario, Indiana, Michigan, Massachusetts, Oregon, California, wherever you go, you're working with the Rockers. And you even have a match that goes to a 20-minute time limit draw that winds up airing on April 10th. You filmed it back on March 7th in El Paso, Texas, but still, you're having a lot of fun with the Rockers. It's clear you guys have chemistry because they keep bringing the match back over and over and over.
Yep. I think, I'm proud of that match, as proud as anything I've done in the business. I would have liked to have had every market see that match. That's how much I thought of it. And we were just having a ball working with those guys. I mean, they were special.
Your second trip to Madison Square Garden is a matinee show, 20,000 folks, a sellout, March 18th, 1989. It's televised on the MSG network. And, Tony Schiavone, your old pal, is on commentary with Lord Alfred Hayes here. The Rockers are going to beat Arn and Tully by DQ, but the real story here is you supposedly sustained a cracked vertebrae in the match. Is this the injury we've heard about before?
Yeah, it was the beginning of the end. Those guys hit a double victory roll.
Yep.
And somehow, now Marty will tell you he did everything right, and I'm not going to dispute it, but my head did not get tucked and got jammed in the mat, and all I heard was purely accidental. Just one of those things, and it was probably my fault that I didn't get tucked anyway. But my arm started burning. I mean, right away. And when you're injured, you know it. We get hurt every time we go to the ring, but getting injured, you know it. And I rolled out of the ring, and Tully and Sean continued what they were fighting off to the side. And I rolled out, and it had to be just one of those things because I just stopped ringside, and I'm trying to assess how bad it was. And here comes Marty, and I'm going, neck. Now, he thought, I'm telling him I'm hurt. He thought I meant punch me in the neck. So he starts punching me in the neck. And I said, no, you dumb son of a bitch, I'm hurt. Get away from me. He got away from me. We somehow continued the match with me just basically coming in and kicking. That same night, Boston Garden, we had another shot. And to try to go out and have the kind of match that town, which was a huge market.
It's a sellout, 15,200 fans. Not only do you do the match, it's 22 minutes long.
Well, heard or not, I knew something was bad. We didn't have what I would say legitimate doctors in the locker room like the business does now. I mean, you had a guy that would come in and check your pulse and look at your eyes and go, "Yep, you're good." That was some more of those doctors that commission doctors that were there to get paid. But I knew something was bad, and I had iced my neck all the way from the Garden. And then I got there and I got, some couple of heating pads, and I was doing everything therapy wise I could. I would have to go back and look at the match, and I haven't looked at it intentionally because I'm pretty sure from my perspective in my end, I shit the bed, but I had a broke neck, and I got through another day or two. Whenever the tour finished up, ended up going home, getting an x-ray, and the doc said, "Oh, by the way, you got a cracked vertebrae." And I'd wrestled however many matches after that. So I just kept it to myself, spent my 3 days home, tried to do everything I could do therapy wise, and went back on the road and just worked through it.
It's remarkable that you gutted it out. If you're listening to this and you want to see that match, by the way, you can see it on the Shawn Michaels My Journey production. Let's talk about where we are, by the way. Both of these matches, Madison Square Garden, where the injury happened and where you gutted it out, same day, New York and Boston, March 18th, 1989. Less than 2 weeks later, it's time for WrestleMania, your very first WrestleMania. You're going to be taking on Strikeforce, Tito Santana and Rick Martel. We've talked about this a little bit before, but they're going to use this to almost be a storyline for Tito and Rick to break up. They go 9 minutes and 17 seconds. You got to be excited to be at your first WrestleMania, Trump Plaza. This is big time stuff, but you're here hurt. That's less than ideal, right?
Well, believe it or not, it was a blessing because being the fact that we did the switch and the angle during the match, which came out of our match time,
yeah,
and all that, I actually had to do a lot less that kind of went unnoticed because we shot the angle.
Yeah.
It was a blessing in disguise. God, I'd hate to be out there on my first WrestleMania and not be able to do anything. So in a weird way, being dinged up and shooting that angle during that match and only having 9 minutes, it actually worked out. I don't think it was noticeable that I was injured to the degree I was. Hope it wasn't.
No, I mean, Meltzer liked it. He gave it 2.5 stars and says, everything was executed well, but the match was nothing compared to the expectations many had, but it was because of the angle. It wasn't because of the match or the work. It was just storyline, not shitting and getting.
That's fair.
You're back at it though. April 4th, we're taping Superstars. And of course, you guys are still winning everywhere with these spike pile drivers. We do another Saturday night's main event. And this one happens on April 25th in Des Moines, but it airs on May 27th. So more than a month later. And here you're going to beat the tag champs Demolition by DQ, finally getting to work with Demolition and in a primetime spot like Saturday night's main event, not just a house show. Not to diminish that it's never not fun working with your old pal Darso, but Saturday night's main event against your old pal, the tag champs, that's pretty cool stuff.
You bet. You bet. Absolutely. Love working with those guys. Tremendous. And that vehicle, again, that Saturday night's main event, I mean, they dressed up the arena, everything, extra pyro, extra music, as Saturday night's main event hanging above the ring, you name it. It felt like a big deal because it was a big deal.
That's right.
And we were on a roll, and we're established now, and it was awesome. Really was.
Let's talk about April 26th. You're in Omaha. It's a primetime wrestling episode. Huge crowd, 10,310 fans. It's a sellout. But this is a little different. Arn and Tully are going to beat Coco Beware and the Blue Blazer. We know much later, Blue Blazer's not going to wear that mask. He'll be Owen Hart, and they're going to have a tag team, the High Energy or whatever. Chat me up though. Do you remember this match working with Owen? Is this the first time you worked with Owen?
Possibly. No other company, I don't think.
Right.
But him and Coco would have been a great babyface team to go out and, us just give a competitive match to. There would be some teams that would go out and, let's just say, Warlord and Barbarian. I'm sure they wouldn't have had a competitive match with those guys. All the monster teams, would have probably not took that opportunity. Coco Beware is a good worker.
Yeah.
Blue Blazer, very good worker. And we took advantage of that, I'm sure. Have to see the match back, but I would guarantee you almost for whatever time we had, we made it as competitive as possible.
As April comes to a close, all throughout May, June, and July, through the house show circuit, you're losing one after another to the Bushwhackers. And I recognize that these guys were badasses everywhere they were before they were here, but the sheep herders become the Bushwhackers and effectively become comedy characters for kids. And I guess the rule of thumb on house shows is send them home happy. You got to have these, kids' favorites go over, but it sort of sticks out like a sore thumb in hindsight. What do you remember about all these matches with the Bushwhackers?
Now, we hadn't won the titles yet, had we?
No.
So I used that word with Tom Mcgee, a test.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the Bushwhackers, while we were working with them, we were putting them over anyway. One of them got hurt.
Luke got hurt and Paul Roma was in there.
Well, for a while, no one was there.
Wait, you wrestled both Bushwhackers? I mean, you both of you wrestled one Bushwhacker?
It was a single match with one on the floor,
okay.
Tully, and we alternated.
I see.
But the reality is this. If he beat me or he beat Tully, he beat us both.
That's right.
The fact that it wasn't a handicap match in that sense, we still did the things you have to do, getting heat on the guy behind the referee's back and all those things to try to paint the picture. He's not going to be able to overcome this. You had to tell the story. But in the end, what he ended up doing is beating you both because he did overcome it.
Right.
And we knew that. And I think I'm pretty correct. If they were probably settled already that they were putting the tag titles on us. So they were giving us a test. Would we balk at putting the sheep herders over? And if we would have, they would have never seen those titles. It was just to see, hey, are these guys going to do business no matter what? We did business no matter what.
Yeah, no matter what, including in the Cajun Dome on June 16th. It's Butch and Paul Roma subbing for Luke, beating you guys. Butch gets the pin on you. I want to mention there's a marathon taping in Niagara Falls on June 27th, 1989, and you wrestle the Pit Bulls. Now, of course, they're not called the Pit Bulls, but our ECW listeners to this show will recall the Pit Bulls, Tony and Gary Wolf, and Tony Durante and Gary Wolf. Either way, though, you beat those guys in about 2.5 minutes. Did you even recognize, and looking back, that you had ever worked the Pit Bulls? I know you probably saw them on ECW TV, but with as many matches as you've worked, it has to eventually just sort of blend together, right?
Yeah. A lot of them I just can't remember.
Right.
Just can't. It's the sheer volume of different matches. And, and in those days it was twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday too. You get to a TV taping and it's, you could, like I said earlier, you could wrestle 3 matches at TV and they just started to run together. I hate that we didn't have more time because that one couldn't have been too competitive. Somebody had to get over during that match, and I would assume that would be us.
You're exactly right. And it's because of what's coming next. July 18th in Worcester, at the Centrum Arena there. There it is. Saturday night's main event, number 22. It's filmed on the 18th. It airs on the 29th on NBC. This is the 2 out of 3 falls match where Arn and Tully win the tag titles from Demolition, smash pins Anderson in pinfall number 1. In pinfall number 2, the champs are disqualified for continuously double teaming after ramming Heenan into a ring post and hitting the decapitation on Blanchard. Late in the fall, though, Andre the Giant pops up ringside, and Anderson then pins Smash at 12:33 once Blanchard hit Smash in the back of a head that was with a chair that was thrown in by Andre. And it's a big celebration. Backstage, you're with Jesse Ventura, Rick Rude's there, Haku's there, of course Andre's there. Everybody's celebrating with the Heenan family, and the Brainbusters are tag champs on NBC, no less. It's a big deal.
Bet your ass. The only negative that came from that is Tully laid that chair in on Barry and gave him a concussion.
Oh shit.
Yeah, he and I'm sure Barry, the kind of performer he is, he looked at Tully and said beforehand, "Hey, hit me, because we're getting beat here. I want something substantial." But there's really no way with a guy's laying in the position he was, because he hit him in the back of the head. There's no way to judge it. There's no way to protect yourself. It's a steel chair. Something people don't understand. You can say and do what you want. It's a steel chair. And it knocked him cuckoo, and he had some issues, I think, for a while after that. And him being as good a friend as he is of mine, that took a little bit of the joy out of it.
I want to mention 4 months after this, you guys are out of here. When you win the belts in July, you're gone in November, and you were working out like a 90-day notice. So you're putting in notice like just a month after winning the belts.
Yep. And if you go back, the thing about it is, Conrad, you've named all these towns and what the houses were and the dates.
Yeah.
And how many people were there.
Yeah.
How could we be 50 grand behind what we had made with Crockett at that point in the fiscal year?
Yeah.
Because the business was down.
Yeah.
So when you ask that question, there's probably two answers.
Right.
One would be, "Oh God, I had no idea. I'll fix that." Or, "Oh well, shit happens." And we got the "oh well, shit happens." So
that's it. That's all there is to say.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't because business wasn't right. And, if you're the tag champions, which are not paid like a single main event.
Right.
It's split 4 ways versus 2 ways.
Right.
So you're not going to make singles money, no matter where your position, if you're in a tag. And we figured out 3 weeks later when we were told, "Okay, let me research this. I'll get back to you at the next TV taping." And it was a no-go on catching us up to where we needed to be so we could go forward the rest of the year. So we turned in our notice. That's how that happened.
Before we get there, I want to mention you guys do a taping for Superstars that airs on August 5th. And the 3 of you appear on the Brother Love show. And Jesse calls your recent tag team title win a major upset that nobody thought they had a chance. And I think you guys say something like, "We started off with the Stallions, went to the Rockers, went to the Bushwhackers, and finished with Demolition." And Heenan's promising at SummerSlam, you'll see the Brainbusters win again, just like this time, fair and square. What do you remember about your appearance on the Brother Love show? That was the cover of a WWF program, and lots of people post that picture online.
Well, it was cool. It was because that was a featured part of the show.
Yeah.
I would have hated that I couldn't do my own promo out of my own brain, out of my own mouth. And everything was scripted for us there. We didn't get a chance to, run with anything. And there wasn't much storytelling going on in the promos. So, at the time it would have been a big deal being on Brother Love's show, but probably better use of the time if they would have gave us some time and let us say what we thought.
Let's talk about SummerSlam. It is your next big event. Again, another sellout, the Meadowlands, August 28th. You're in the opening match, defending your tag titles against the Hart Foundation. I love this match. I don't know why Meltzer didn't. He only gave it 2 stars. I thought it was fantastic. I thought your work in particular in this one really, really stood out. I love the way you do the illegal tag, and when you make the cover, you cover your head up with your arm and your opponent's arm to, disguise the fact that it's you and not Tully. Really a great match. I loved your stuff with the Hart Foundation. I go back and watch this at least once a year. What'd you think about it?
I was a sneaky bastard, wasn't I?
Yes, you were and are.
And I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those guys, they were great to work with, and we had enough time. I would have liked to have done the spike pile driver for the finish just because it was stronger way to beat Brett, to be honest with you. The finish was came up with, it was just so, and it wasn't as impactful. Would love to have done our finish. It just, when you beat a guy with your best stuff, it's better for him. I'm not a big fan of a schoolboy or a roll up or anything. And, if you're going to beat me with your best stuff. And that would have been our best stuff at the time. But we had a fresh crowd. It was early and nothing had been seen hardly yet. So we got them at the right time. And I think the crowd reaction was pretty good.
No doubt about it. In September, you're going to continue working live events against Demolition in Nashville, Minneapolis, LA, San Diego, and everywhere else. But then the big day happens. Louisville, Kentucky, September 20th. It's a wrestling challenge taping at the Louisville Gardens. And it's written during the day. WWF tag champions Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard gave their notice that they would be leaving the company for the NWA. Of course, later on that show, you would both win a squash match against a couple of unknowns. Same thing the next night. Here's what Meltzer wrote of this. We've got plenty of news to hit this week as well. The biggest story, and the one with a lot of potential ramifications, is that Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson gave their notice to the WWF at TV tapings on Wednesday night in Louisville, and will be leaving after the Survivor Series on Thanksgiving night to return to the NWA. If nothing else, this is the first time in recent memory that the NWA has actually raided from the WWF, a mainline talent, and been successful. Truthfully, this has been a year without raids on either side, as with the exception of the WWF signing Tony Schiavone, a TV announcer. Neither side has raided for the entire year, although there have been rumors that constantly float around. I don't know that I would call this a raid, but still, you've talked about this before to me off air. This set a bad precedent. Everybody jumped to the WWF. Nobody jumped to leave, and you would be one of the first ones to go, right?
The first one.
Yeah.
Number one, that was September the 20th, which, you know what that is? My birthday.
How about quitting on your birthday?
That was sweet. Sweet. No, it was, I'm just a firm believer. If you give me your word, stick by it, because I'll give you my word and I'll stick by it. And there's no exceptions to that where business is concerned. And we turned in our notice and all that stuff. I didn't know it was out there and well known that, because we didn't say we were going to the NWA. Actually, at that time, there was some people in Japan getting a hold of us and wanting us to. So it wasn't like it was a definitive, okay, we're leaving here from there, but that might have been the story at that particular time. But no one had put in their notice, and the contracts, in those days were, here's all you were guaranteed: 10 days at $150 a day to do television. That's it. That's all your guarantee was on that contract, which any lawyer could have beat if you were willing to take it to court. So, we were the first ones to turn in our notice, and we were being used good at the time. It kind of took everybody by surprise. But when we came out of Vince's office, that's after giving our notice and stuff, and, it got out pretty quickly that we were leaving. There was about 6 or 7 guys lined up to go in and see Vince. that apparently were, I can't remember who it was, but they weren't happy either because business was good. Business was good. There's no reason the money would be down, but it was. And apparently there was more people having this discussion than us. And I guess after the second or third guy knocked on Vince's door, the word we heard was he said, look, guys, you guys must think these contracts are worthless or not valid contracts. If you want to contest them, that's fine. Nobody else is getting out of their contract. So there was a stampede starting to build that he cut the water off pretty quick.
Meltzer wrote a lot about this. He says, in recent months, the salary structure within Titan Sports, at least for the middle of the card wrestlers, has been lower than in the past. And there's been speculation that they no longer have viable alternatives because they don't consider the NWA a viable alternative. Quote, I do know that most of the WWF wrestlers don't consider the NWA a viable promotion, since most of the information they were getting was that it was on its last legs. Since brainwashing propaganda of the boys has been a longtime tool of management in many promotions, probably since the beginning of time in the business. With Blanchard and Anderson leaving and claiming it was because they would make significantly more money in the NWA, all of a sudden, a lot of people who didn't consider the NWA as an alternative financially will now be taking notice as to how Vince McMahon handles this situation. Will McMahon ignore it, figuring that he's on top and is so far on top that this is nothing more than a minor inconvenience? Or will he try and take legal action and force Blanchard and Anderson to fulfill their contracts? By not doing so, it would seem to signal a green light for any Titan wrestler who wants to renege on their contract. So he could have opened up a can of worms here. I'm excited to see, what we talk about in the future with that, because we do know there is going to be some back and forth and some guys who are making jumps. But the first order of business is, let's get the belts off of Arn and Tully. And they do that on October 2nd. And it's a Superstars taping that airs on November 4th. It's in Wheeling, West Virginia, a sellout again. Demolition gets the win, and it only takes 5.5 minutes to get it done. But again, this is a different era because it's on a tape delay. You lose the match, so you're no longer champions, but you're still going to carry the belts for the next month. That's a little weird in hindsight, but that's just the way the business was back then, right?
Yep. That's where it was. You did what you had to for TV to catch up with you.
The October 31st, 1989 series of tapings is the 2 out of 3 falls match with the Rockers. And I think you said this is probably your favorite WWF match that you had, 2 out of 3 falls with the Rockers, right?
Yep. Because we had plenty of time. We had that platform to do it on. And by then we had worked with those guys so much we could do it with our eyes closed.
Tully's last match is November 1st, 1989. The Ultimate Warrior beats him in 6 minutes by DQ. It's because you interfere. And after the bout, Jim Neidhart, Shawn Michaels, and Marty make the save. And of course, Haku and Andre come out to level it up. And we know that's going to be something that they're building for Survivor Series. But Meltzer would write, Tully was fired immediately following this taping as a result of failing a drug test. He and Anderson are already on their way out of the WWF and were scheduled to have their last match at Survivor Series before rejoining the NWA because of the failed drug test. Only Anderson was rehired by Atlanta. The scheduled tag team champions Demolition versus Arn Anderson match did not take place. Demolition versus Arn and Tully rather. So what's the thinking here? Let's let Ultimate Warrior beat him. And once we get that out of the way, then we'll let him know he's fired.
Well, sure. You're going to get the mileage you can out of a guy. Because let's face it, it's, if they were going to send him home anyway, the thing that baffles me a little bit, if it was a DQ finish, why wouldn't he have just beat him?
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess I want to mention too, that got misconstrued at the time. Wade Keller reported that Blanchard was actually fired for refusing to do the job to the Ultimate Warrior and that they had to settle on the DQ. I just don't buy that. What say you?
Bullshit. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Well, everybody's talking about you guys jumping, saying it's more than meets the eye. This is going to be a major PR problem. And they're also saying that perhaps Titan offered the opportunity to send Tully to rehab. I don't know how much of that I believe. I mean, especially if it's, I mean, I don't mean to be weird, but goddamn, what wrestlers in the 80s didn't try cocaine once or twice? And I'm not saying that everybody did, but to act like Tully Blanchard's the only one who did is fucking laughable.
Yeah, of course it is. And thing about it is, in those days, they weren't, concerned with your health and well-being and send you to rehab. They just left you off for 90 days without pay.
Right.
That was a punishment.
Right.
If you got popped for the drug test, there was levels of punishment, and it wasn't about spending $100,000 to send you to rehab. That wasn't one of the options.
In hindsight, here's my question, Arn. Do you think Vince McMahon wants to set a precedent? He does have a potential situation on his hands. If you guys put in notice and he just lets you leave, do you think he does the whole drug test thing just to fuck y'all up on the way out? Cause ultimately it ended Tully's career and cut your money in half.
Of course, he was insulted that we would leave him.
So it was a tit for tat, I'll show you type situation.
Yes. And, when you send a guy home like that and a guy that's that high profile, it's going to make news, and it's going to be a negative that he's going to work with the other company, even though, like you said, 90% of the guys in the locker room were doing something,
right.
It was going to be a black eye on us returning there before we ever got there. And that's where Vince is smart. He knows to play the game and use everything to his advantage. And here's the real rib. Let me tell you how smart and diabolical he is. After Tully was sent home, and however many weeks, you could probably tell from that I had left. We were working with Demolition, and suddenly my pay doubled.
Really?
And every week it was like, wait a minute, am I getting the right check here? He ended up paying me more than I had made with Crockett substantially. So at the end of the day, he did what he said he would do, even though he didn't tell us at the time he was going to do it. But it was like a FU to Tully and an FU to me that, hey guys, see, I told you to stick with me. I can do anything I want, anytime I want. And that ended up being my biggest year in the business, year to date.
Do you think it was me and you've had a real conversation about this with Crockett before, that when things got sideways for you there, you would have stuck around if he just would have had a conversation? Do you think Vince just wasn't communicating? I mean, he clearly had some missteps along the way. He lost money on No Holds Barred and got distracted and took his eye off the ball with a few of those ideas and ventures. But if he would have just come to you and said, hey guys, I know I said I would do this, made some missteps, going to correct it, hang with me, maybe that would have been the case. But instead it was, let me figure it out. And then when you pressed him, hey, I don't have it, go get your old job back.
He was offended that we went to him.
Yeah.
To question anything about his company. I don't care what it was, offended him. And we did it in a business-like way. We reminded him of the conversation, the exact numbers, the way it went down, everything. Him saying, well, guys, how much do you make? Okay, well, I assure you I'll beat that. That's words you hang your hat on.
Right.
Why wouldn't you?
Of course.
So it was just it was what it was. He was offended, and he's going to have the last word.
Well, before you get out of here, you mentioned you still had a month's worth of bookings to fulfill with Tully gone. You're going to team with Akeem at least one time. It happened in Rockford, Illinois, November 2nd. Not a huge crowd, only 1,500 fans there. What was it like teaming with Akeem?
I don't remember.
There you go.
I do not remember that. I thought it was Haku all the way out.
You did Haku a lot though, like Peoria, Schofield, all over the place. And of course, everybody knows about Survivor Series 89. We've even talked about that before, but It is kind of cool to see you get a rare victory over Shawn Michaels, at a Survivor Series on your way out. You would think conventional wrestling would be beat him fast, beat him early, beat him dominantly. And they didn't do that.
They wanted to save me for Warrior because that's who ended up putting me out later during that match, Survivor Series, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I'm sure Sean wasn't happy that, my last night there that I was beating him with a spine buster. I'm sure he wasn't happy, but nothing came of it. I did what was asked of me right to the bitter end.
Well, let's talk about it. This brings to a close your WWF run from 88 to 89. How would you sum up your experience in that period of your life?
I would like to say there was a ton of positives, but to be honest with you, from where I had left, if you weigh one against the other with the private planes and the family feeling that you had in the locker rooms and the company in general, and just the fact that I could be home a lot of nights, the Carolinas and all those places that were drivable afforded you so much more time with your family. And I had a small child, right? Barrett at the time, I think was 3, and getting to spend more time with him was just a blessing. And up there, I cannot explain how it was functioning on a day and a half to 2.5 days off and having to travel like we were traveling, wrestle on a hard ring, which was, you finally got used to that. That was not an issue, and play all the head games on top of it. There was just a lot of negatives about being there. It was a learning experience. Like I said, I ended up substantially higher than I had made before, so it was good for my family. And in the very end, Conrad, if you know me, my family comes first, period. If I've taken care of them properly, it doesn't matter, what company I work for or where I quit or where I stayed when I should have quit and all these other variables. Number one, take care of your family. And that's what I've always done. And it's worked out great for me in the long run, which if you'd have looked at this 20 years ago, you might have said, well, guy had a bright future, but so I would have preferred to stayed with Crockett and the company still be in business, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out the way it did. We got some great matches. I got to see you. I was a WWF kid at the time, and I remember your run there very fondly. And now we get to see what happened behind the scenes, and I'm glad we got to cover it in great detail. We've talked a little bit about it before, especially the coming and going, but the actual run in the middle, you were only there a year, but man, you made the most of it, didn't you?
I think so. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the matches we were able to have, and proud of the fact that we were able to grit our teeth and, and get through the travel and all the other difficult things. It's not an easy place to work. You got to be a good businessman to last there. You got to be a straight shooter to work your way around, all the head games. And it's real easy to remember the truth. You never forget the truth. Just tell the truth. You can always remember it. If you tell lies, you can't remember which lie you told. It gets a little more difficult. So that's my theory, and I'm going to go with it.
And we greatly appreciate Geico sponsoring this podcast. I've wanted to talk about this for a long time. I'm glad we finally did it. And Arn, 3 shows in a week. We're overdosing on Arn right here during the holidays. I hope everyone listening to this has a great Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's. And don't forget, we'll be back next week. We're not abandoning you. But my goodness, 3 episodes in a week. This was fun, dude.
I promise I won't say another word for a while.
Well, I hope that's not true, because we're looking to hearing from you next week. Don't forget, if you haven't already, go check out our visit with Tully Blanchard. You can also see our shows and get them early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. Until next time, he is at The Arn Show. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here on Arn.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money, it's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.